Celtics. NBA approves the deal. What changes now? Update. Speak up, Celtics Nation. If you opened YouTube today and thought everyone is talking about this, but what has really changed? Stay with me. The NBA approved the deal, and the pain here is clear. When news like this comes out, the whirlwind of rumors, panic, and now, is the team going to change everything? We can't fall for this. In less than 30 seconds, I will show you what was confirmed, what is changing behind the scenes, and, most importantly, what does not change on the court, so you can leave here with clarity and not with anxiety. Let's go. Before I show you what's really changing now, do the following quickly. Subscribe to the channel, because here you're not hostage to rumors, you're well informed about the Celtics. And leave a like, because this helps a lot to deliver the video to more people in Celtics Nation. Now activate the bell, because when a last-minute update comes out, you will be one of the first to know. Combined? So stay with me until the end, because in the next block I'll show you the main point of this approval and the real impact on the team. No nonsense. Let's do it. What in the name of Larry Bird is happening in Sacramento? I ask you this question because when a team starts to lose ground so quickly, it feels like watching a script that no one planned, but which requires big decisions. And big decisions are almost always accompanied by noise, speculation, and that typical something is going to happen smoke. And here comes the part that really interests us here at the Celtics Talk Show. When a team gets into this kind of turmoil, someone always tries to save themselves first. Not always out of selfishness, often out of career instinct. A veteran player knows that the season doesn't wait, that the clock doesn't stop, that the window to compete doesn't stay open forever. When the atmosphere becomes heavy, when defeat becomes routine, when the promise of "it will come together soon" stops convincing even those in the locker room, the veteran begins to look to the side and think, I still have basketball to deliver. Where can I deliver this with purpose? That's why the name DeMar DeRozan starts to appear heavily in this conversation. And I want to talk about this with you in the right way, calmly, as if we were sitting at the same table, because this subject has two layers. There is the rumor layer, which is noisy, which runs faster than any confirmation, and there is the logic layer, which is silent, but is usually the one that rules in the end. DeRozan is not a player who needs an introduction. You may like the style more or less, you may prefer a three-point shooter, you may have reservations about fit, but it's impossible to pretend that he doesn't know how to score. He is a specialist in an area that many people underestimate until the game gets tough. The mid-range attack, the rhythm game, the shot that doesn't depend on a perfect pass or a huge advantage. He lives right in that territory where the defense is already positioned, and even so, you need a basket because you need it, without space, without a clear advantage, without a beautiful script. It's the type of game that, on paper, seems old, but in the playoffs it becomes modern again because it is efficient when things get difficult. And that's exactly why this issue touches Boston in such a direct way. Because the Celtics, even when they are dominant, even when the defense is at a high level and the team is functioning, there is always a question that accompanies any title contender. What do you do when the game turns into a half-court playoff game? What do you do when Plan A becomes more difficult, when Plan B is red, when the opponent changes everything, closes the bottle, runs to the line of three and says, in other words, now I want to see who creates something out of nothing. If you really follow Boston, you know how this works. In a series, nobody gives you anything. The opposing defense chooses what it will take from you. And if you have no alternatives, the series becomes a tug of war, becomes repetition, becomes predictable. You feel that familiar pain in your skin. The ball is heavy, the clock is ticking, and each possession seems like a test of patience. You look at the court and think, we just need someone to solve 2 or 3 possessions in a row for the team to breathe. This is the pain. And it's a pain for a big team, for a team that thinks about June, not January. And that's when the idea of adding a veteran scorer who doesn't need much to produce, who knows how to play in the silence of the big game, and who can ease the burden on the main creators is born. I'm not talking about savior. I'm not talking about someone who arrives to be the center of the universe. I'm talking about a catalyst, a piece that comes in and changes the geometry of the game without having to take over the team. Because there is a common error in this discussion. People hear veteran scorer coming and automatically imagine conflict, D-space dispute, hierarchy clash. But it's not always like that. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it is precisely this type of piece that unlocks, that gives breathing space, that returns efficiency, that makes others play better without it appearing in an obvious statistic. Think about Jaylen Brown, for example. On nights when he needs to carry a large part of the attack, he delivers, competes, plays seriously. But the cost of this appears. It appears in the defensive energy, it appears in the detail, it appears in the closeout half a second late, it appears in that transition run that doesn't come with the same leg. Now imagine what it would be like for him to have more moments to choose where to accelerate and where to breathe, not to reduce impact, but to increase quality. Brown with more freedom to select attacks, to play with time in his favor, to arrive more fully in the final minutes. And, on the other side, imagine DeRozan occupying a space that forces the defense to make uncomfortable decisions, to fold or not to fold, exchange or no exchange. Does it help or is it stuck? If it helps, where does this help come from? And when the defense needs to think too much, it takes an extra half step, it hesitates, it opens up a gap. At a high level, a crack becomes a layup, becomes a free three ball, becomes a back cut. The defense hates this kind of dilemma. That's why so many people look at this rumor and think, this could get dangerous. But I also don't want to sell you just the pretty side. Here the conversation is honest, really honest. And honesty, in this case, means talking about fit, cost, and consequence. The offensive fit is the first question. DeRozan likes the ball in his hands at certain times. He likes to control the pace. The Celtics already have creators. So the question is not whether he knows how to play. The question is whether he would accept the right role, whether he would accept being the option that comes in to solve specific possessions, to punish mismatches, to be the answer when the attack threatens to stall. Because if he embraces this idea, you win a piece that decides big games. If he doesn't hug, you create redundancy. And redundancy, in a champion team, becomes a waste of minutes and opportunities. Defense is the second question, and perhaps the most emotional one for Boston. The Celtics pride themselves on defense. Its culture, its identity, it's the kind of thing that holds the team back on bad nights. Any addition needs to respect this. DeRozan has never been a poster defender, but he's also not automatically an impossible hole to hide. With structure, with communication, with a squad that knows how to rotate and cover spaces, it is possible to maximize strengths and limit weaknesses. And if there is an environment that knows how to do this, it is an environment with the discipline and versatility that Boston usually has when it is committed. And finally comes the cost. This is where fans become more sensitive, and rightly so. Because you look at the future, you look at the young roster, you look at draft picks and think, is it worth changing this now? And I tell you what I think simply, there is no universal answer, there is context. If the window is open and the team has a real chance of getting a banner, you can't act like you're rebuilding. At the same time, you also can't act as if tomorrow doesn't exist. The correct question is, what is the price of a real upgrade without compromising the core and without dismantling depth? And that's where the opportunities that arise when a team is in crisis come in. A team in crisis has urgency, want assets. You want flexibility. You want to start over without saying, we're starting over out loud. And when this happens, windows appear that would not exist in a stable scenario. It's not that it's free, it's just that it's more accessible than it otherwise would be. And of course, the Celtics would not be alone in this race. There will always be other possible destinations, and some of them have narrative appeal, emotional appeal, and necessity appeal. A return to Toronto is the kind of story the league understands right away. A team like Golden State may look at its own offense and feel like it needs immediate scoring. Cleveland might think about easing Donovan Mitchell's life. Utah may want to put a veteran alongside youth to speed up a process. Each of these teams can put together an argument that makes sense to themselves, but there is an important difference. What makes sense for the team is not always what makes sense for the player. And when you talk about a veteran at that level, that weighs heavily. The chance to compete weighs. It weighs down the environment. It weighs on the locker room. Consider how it will be used. The real possibility of playing big games weighs, and that's why Boston appears as such a strong destination in the conversation. Boston offers structure, offers culture, offers a ready-made squad, offers a real chance of going far, and offers a system in which he wouldn't need to be everything. He would need to be enough at the right time. For a veteran, this is gold. Now, there is one point that I think completely changes how you see this speculation. Exchange is not just a name coming in and a name going out. Exchange is a change of identity in micro details. If the Celtics add a player like DeRozan, the team gains a tool that is not central to the arsenal today, a half-court creator who thrives on difficult shots and doesn't get scared when the defense knows what's going to happen. In the playoffs, this is the kind of thing that decides Game 4, Game 6, that possession with just over a minute on the clock where you simply need 2 points. And when you add that to what Boston already has, you start to see a team that doesn't run out of answers so easily. But I also need to say, bluntly, there is no perfect exchange. There is always a but. And the however here is the rotation. It is the balance of minutes. It is the maintenance of chemistry. Who loses space? Who stops having rhythm? Who leaves at closing? The Celtics have players who have grown because the system requires everyone to know exactly their role. When adding another heavy name, you need to ensure that the roles remain clear, that the team remains cohesive, that the locker room remains aligned. And here comes the factor that almost no one can measure from the outside: leadership. DeRozan has built a reputation as a serious professional, a guy who works, who prepares, who understands the game. If he arrives with a complimentary mentality, he improves the environment. If he arrives with the need for absolute protagonism, he creates noise. So the big question for me is not just whether he fits on the court. It's whether he fits into the story Boston is writing now. Because Boston isn't writing a survival story. He is writing a story of ambition, of demands, of legacy. And that's why this rumor attracts so much attention. Now, I want to bring you to what really happens behind the scenes. This is not born from a manager waking up and saying, "Let's get this player." It arises from scenarios, contract studies, market reading, discreet conversations, feeling the pulse of the other side. And when December arrives, teams start to understand who they are. And when a team understands that it is sinking, it needs to face its own reality. If Sacramento is in crisis, the reality may be to sell. And if it sells, veterans will be discussed more seriously. And if the Celtics see a chance to add impact without destroying what they've already built, it's only natural that their name will come up on the table. But I don't want you to leave here feeling like this is inevitable. I want you to come out clearly. Clarity that the Celtics don't need a savior, but every champion team likes to have more than one way to win. Clarity that a veteran scorer can be the fit that changes big games, as long as the fit is right and the price is smart. And clarity that if there is ever a time to look at the present and think about maximizing the chance of raising a banner, it is when you have a squad that is already ready to compete at the highest level. Now, I return the conversation to you because I like it when this community builds together. When you think of DeMar DeRozan wearing green and white, what comes first? Excitement or caution? Do you see it as the piece that alleviates the attack when the game gets stuck? Or do you think Boston should look for a name with a different profile, someone more plug-and-play, someone who requires less ball play, someone with a more direct defensive impact? Write in the comments, because I really read and use your opinions to guide the next videos. And if you want to follow this season of rumors with context, calm, and real analysis, subscribe to the Celtics Talk Show. Here we don't live off empty headlines. We live by understanding what's behind the headline. And stay with me in the video, because in the next section I want to talk about the more practical side of all of this. What kind of rotation would make sense, how this fit could work in big games, and what would change in a playoff series against the main opponents in the East. From here, the season enters that phase where one detail changes everything. And if there's a chance Boston can turn a very good team into an even tougher team to play against, that conversation isn't going away. And with everything we've said, the only certainty we have is that the Celtics are ready to take another step towards the title. The chance to add a piece like DeMar DeRozan, who brings experience, scoring, and versatility, could be the definitive move to transform this team from contender into an unstoppable machine heading to the banner 18. But as always, each step needs to be taken with intelligence and long-term vision. Now, I want to hear from you. Is DeRozan the missing name to complete the puzzle, or should the Celtics explore other options? Leave your comment below. because I love seeing each of your opinions. And if you like this analysis and want to stay up to date with everything that is going on in the Celtics universe, be sure to check out our Celtics Analysis playlist. It's in the comment pinned here below. This playlist will bring you the best analysis, the most impactful plays, and the hottest rumors about the Celtics. So, click there, enjoy, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any details of this epic journey. We're in this together, Celtics Nation, and the season is just heating up. Let's head towards Banner 18.